Do you hold ETH but don't know what to do with it? Want to earn those juicy liquid staking derivative yields but don't know where to start? Well, FrxETH is there for you. FrxETH is Frax's native LSD solution, allowing you to earn boosted yields in multiple ways on your ETH. If you want to get started, go to app.frax.finance and turn your ETH into FrxETH today. All right, everyone. Welcome back to Flywheel. I'm your host, DeFi Dave, here with Capital K. We are doing a special edition from Token 2049, and I am here with Dan from Pendle. He is the head of growth. We actually met earlier during the week. We met during the DWF event. Yeah, that was a good. There's been so many events. How has your week been so far?
It's been pretty good, pretty exciting. I think pretty much the whole world is coming to Singapore now, Token 2049, and you get to meet a lot of cool people that you just talk on Twitter and a bunch of DMs, and they're seeing them in person just makes a very big difference.
Yeah, I always say, you get to see the person behind the PFP. Yeah. It's a really magical moment.
Yeah, but for NFT profiles, and you get to see them and realize some of them look like the NFT profile, some of them are just different, but it's been pretty interesting so far.
Let's be real, 90% do not look like they're
Yeah. That's true. But, it's funny, I see people with anime profile pictures and they end up being the most Chad. It's just they happen to just be huge weaves, but there's just incredibly Chad.
Yeah, it's quite a few of them.
Yeah. What has been your biggest takeaway so far from Token 2049?
Well, I think the biggest highlight is how different it is from last year. I was in Token 2049 last year as well, but the vibrance is very different. It's much more vibrant today. There's a lot more people. There's a lot more things going on. People are more enthusiastic, I would say, even though we're still in the same bear market, but it's just the enthusiasm is much more real. And the side events as well. Last year, I think it was about 200. Now it's about close to 500 at the side events just this week alone. Just pretty insane to see.
Wow, there's hope in the air, guys. There's deep in the bear, but there's hope in the air.
It's hard for me to believe there's so many side events because I think we each have our own circles and kind of our own scenes that we're exposed to. And you walk into the conference and there's all these different booths. There's all these different people walking around. I'm just you kind of forget how big crypto is,
Yeah, so the diversity, the people in just NFTs and GameFi, you have DeFi, and you have a bunch of different people that you've never been exposed to, and they're pretty big in their own field. I've met quite a couple of them, just in general, just to learn a lot from these people. And also, we can see money flowing in because just the number of events that is being hosted here. Yeah, people are still pouring money into these events.
Yeah, even in a bear, people are pouring money into these events. I think that's what makes this bear different than last bear. Last bear is dark and pure despair, but this bear, you have OKX closing party at Marquee, and
Were you there?
No, I wasn't there.
It was a pretty epic event.
It was.
Yeah, it was pretty. Yeah. There's Arthur Hayes party at Sentosa. It's pretty wild.
Oh yeah, the Arthur Hayes mansion party that got shut down by cops, and people were just climbing over the fence and stuff.
I had a buddy who literally told me that there's a secret entrance if you walk 10 meters this way and then turn right here and left there and crawl through a hole, you'll get it. And I was jeez.
Yeah, I just been doing karaoke this whole time. Do you have super karaoke rooms in Singapore? I feel like I'm in 2049 in these karaoke rooms, I swear.
Yeah, there are a lot of big rooms, insane lightings.
Yeah, it puts America to shame.
Really?
But anyways, enough about Token 2049. Let's get into Pendle. So, for the listeners at home that may not be familiar, what is Pendle and why is it important?
Sure. To put it simply, Pendle is a yield trading protocol. Now, there's a bunch of yield strategies that you can do on Pendle, but I think we'll keep it simple. You can either get fixed yield, or you can trade yield, or you can lever up your yield exposure, and finally you can just stack yield on top of your existing yield bearing asset if you just want extra yield without the hassle. I think that's a good TLDR on what Pendle does.
And so how does it work?
So it's rather complicated behind the scenes, but what we do is we strip away the interest bearing portion of a yield bearing asset. I think it's better for me to use an analogy. So imagine a rental property. You can split away the rental portion away from the ownership of the house. So for example, you own a house, you want to rent it away, and you need an immediate funds, but rental fees only come in every month. What you can do is you sell this right to receive the rent away to someone else, and someone else receives the rent, and you can just get that amount of cash immediately. But the thing is, if rent goes up throughout the period, and then you're basically losing out on the gains, and the rent goes down during the period, you gain money because you already sold the rent position. Yeah, I think that's a brief TLDR what I do. But instead of renting and housing, extend it to any yield-bearing asset. Yield from STETH, yield from LP tokens, yield from SDI bonds, and pretty much anything. The concept is not foreign in traditional finance. It's basically interest rate derivatives, or it's very commonly used in bonds where they strip away the coupon from coupon bond. And yeah, it's not a strange concept, I would say.
Yeah, Dan, I'm glad you brought up the risk about using Pendle and how, you kind of lock in a rate, and if it goes up, you lose out on the upside. But could you walk me through like more of these risk scenarios, particularly what would the worst case for a user look like on chain?
On Pendle, the worst thing that could happen, I would say, well, let's say you buy a yield position on a yield-bearing asset. Let's say we have, this actually happened before. The LP tokens from Balancer. You figured that, okay, the swap fees in this pool is going to be high. I think there's going to be high volatility. So I load up a lot of these yield-bearing position.
What assets are in this Balancer pool? Let's walk through that first.
There's quite a few assets provided on Pendle. Okay. I can't really say on top of my head. There's a Rocket Pool LPs, there's the ETH LPs, and a bunch of pools on Balancer that were supported back then. So one risk is if you buy the yield position of this pool, thinking that, okay, it's going to be high volatility, but then all of a sudden, the Balancer team decides to migrate this to a new pool, which means the yield position from the old pool is going to go to zero because no one's going to swap in that pool. Now, that's a big risk, which means the costs that you paid to buy the yield position won't be covered by the yield receivables. So yeah, I think that's a bigger risk. I think another example would be maybe like Stargate USDT. They're looking to migrate to a new pool as well. So yeah, if you're holding a yield bearing position, that's a risk for you. But also, it's a gain on the other side for people who sell the yield away, thinking that, I think that they're going to migrate soon. I think this yield bearing position is going to be zero in the near term. I can sell this yield position away and I'll just like lock in these rates straight away. So that's a use case.
So isn't there an issue then becomes like almost maturity mismatch, right? Because I had signed up for the yield for this specific Balancer pool for X number of months, but out of nowhere, Balancer tweets out saying, hey guys, we're migrating. And I'm only like a month in to my duration. Like, so I'm pretty much stuck holding the bag until the end, or how does that work?
Yes, exactly. I think you're right. You're stuck holding the bag until the end. I think a good analogy you want to draw in traditional finance is counterparty risk. If you have an interest rate swap agreement with another party and another party can default on its obligation, you're stuck holding it until maturity. And I think that's the whole point. We're just democratizing it to every asset in DeFi. So yeah, I think it's the same idea as traditional finance.
Got it. But then at maturity, you get your assets back, or how does that work?
So there are two parts to it, right? Like when I mentioned, there's the yield position, we call YT, and then there's a principal position. There's a principal money that you put in, right? So we call the principal token PT. Now, YT, obviously, the yield part goes to zero at maturity, so when price declines, but as the price declines, you receive the yield from the underlying. But the principal token side is basically the ownership of the underlying. Like what I mentioned, is that a rental example, at maturity, the value of the rental property will be the house itself, because at maturity, that rental position that you keep for someone else is no longer there. So you hold the right to the house and you hold the right to the rental income. Now, both of those combined is the house property, which means that the principal position of your principal position will be redeemable for the underlying itself. With an example, your PT STETH will be redeemable for STETH, and your PT whatever is going to be redeemable whatever. Now, if Balancer migrates in this case, well, the migration only causes the yield to disappear, but the LP position is still there. So your fixed yield is still guaranteed until the end, unless Balancer decides to shut down the pool, which I don't think is possible contract-wise.
No, I don't think so either.
Yeah.
How much volume do you find in your Pendle markets?
Daily, we're seeing about 1 to 1.5 mil now. I think we're currently close to 190 mil at the moment. Cumulative trading volume since January, December. Yeah, and then TVL, we're currently at about 150 mil. And
what would you say is the profile of your users, and how big is your user base at the current moment?
Yeah, so we do track a lot of our users and notice some interesting profiles. So mainly people who use our app are DeFi pros. the addresses that we stock actively uses Pendle have used other complicated protocols as well. They have either traded options or they've done pretty complex strategies with money markets and all around. So I would say these people are pretty DeFi savvy. Those are the traders, but on the LPs, they're pretty diverse of people. You have people who just want here to farm. You just people who just have done Uniswap before and all of a sudden tried Pendle. It's pretty diverse background in LPs. But for traders, I think those are pretty, pretty sophisticated people. But then again, we are targeting a lot of institutions now. So we try to stalk the addresses to, who uses Pendle. And we figured that about 20% of our entire TVL, we can confirm is from institutions. But those are the addresses that we can't confirm. There are still a lot of funds that we figure that this might be institutions, but they're anonymous. So yeah, my hunch is, I don't know, somewhere between 40 to 50 at least. But yeah, I would say the bulk of our users are pretty sophisticated or institutions.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the users because I want you to walk me through the different user journeys for like a average Joe minter to say a super sophisticated hedge fund trying to hedge away some, rate risk.
Sure. I think the first part will be pretty simple, but I think the second part regarding the complicated one might be a little bit too much for the context of this recording.
It's okay, Dan. I'm stopped you there. On Flywheel, we go deep.
So deep, yeah.
We really do go deep. Like our audience actually managed to keep up, and that's why we want to ask these deep questions for them to truly understand the product holistically and deeply.
All right, sure. Just give me a while here to explain the difference in products. So on Pendle, we have two sets of product, Pendle Earn and Pendle Trade. Now, these two products run on the exact same contracts. Now, like I want to mention previously, Pendle is rather complicated. So what we did is we create a different set of user interface called Pendle Earn, where what you do in Pendle Earn is simply either get fixed yield or LP, and that yield will be volatile, of course. Now, it's a very simple user interface where you just go in and you immediately know what to do, and you don't have to know whatever happens behind the scenes. But again, they run on the exact same set of contracts. So that's the gist of it. So the average Joe coming into Pendle can go to pendle.finance and you'll be redirected to our Earn page, and you can just simply buy any tokens at for a fixed rate yield position, or you can LP for higher yields. And note that LP on Pendle has no permanent loss because there's a bunch of mechanics you can look at it in the docs, but the whole idea is that the LP position is similar to Curve, where the two assets are pretty much pegged to one another. So that's a whole gist. And if you LP to almost, we did a study on our LP. The highest LP ever measured on Pendle was 0.85%. That is if you LP at the most wrong time and you exit at the wrong time. The 0.85%. That's better than most Curve pools, I would say.
Oh, I see. So the IL at that moment will be 0.85.
Yes.
We take out the assets.
Yes, that's the highest IL ever observed based on our study in all of our assets on Pendle.
Got it.
Now, so that's what the average Joe would do on Pendle. Right. Just got to get fixed yield or LP for more yield. Right. The other side of the coin is Pendle Trade. Now,
wait, before we get to Pendle Trade, let me just quickly summarize it for the listeners. So on Pendle Earn, the way I see it is that the users could buy assets effectively at a discount because there's a baked in zero coupon bond effectively.
Yes.
And it would, at maturity, right, these things are literally buy and hold instruments. Yes. Right? You buy it, you hold it, and at maturity, let's say you bought USDC, or Stargate USDC at 0.95 cents, and then at maturity, it will be worth $1. So you effectively locked in that 5%. Now, there's also another element of Pendle Earn is when you LP, and you have to put in the Stargate USDC paired with vanilla USDC, correct? Or SYUSDC.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So effectively, just for simplicity's sake, those are the two products in there. And now people who wants to buy a fixed rate position, they will buy this discounted Stargate USDC. They'll obviously have to pay with vanilla USDC. Or if you want to sell your fixed rate USDC before term, then you have to obviously go in there, swap it out, and you always take a hit. And what Dan said earlier about having the worst case scenario that he's seen is that it hits a 0.85 meaning you got 85 cents on the dollar because you entered and exited at the worst time possible.
0.85% loss.
Percent loss. Oh, I see.
So that was the highest IL in LP has ever observed. So pretty much, I mean, you can think of it as zero IL. It's less than 1% of IL. If you compare it to liquidity position and Uniswap, I will say most people get wrecked by IL. But then on Pendle, because the assets are so packed, the highest IL observed because of some minor fluctuations was 0.85%. So it's 0.00.
I see, 0.85%.
Yes.
Okay, guys, that's 85 bips for everybody else listening.
Yes.
Okay, good clarification. So the worst case is 0.85 bips. That is phenomenal. Okay, now let's talk about Pendle Trade, the more common.
I have one question. So is your like Stableswap curve the same as curves, or do you use like a different one, different invariant curve?
It's different. Our AMM, this is sidetrack a little. Again, it's more into diving into mechanics already, but then how our AMM works, or rather why we approach the AMM design is that there are two things that we need to solve here. First one is that there's a concept called maturity in Pendle, because these assets can't last forever. You can't create a yield token that lasts forever, which means the principal holders just get left in the dust. Right. Now, which means that this token has to have a maturity, which also, and then comes the second problem. If you have a concept of maturity, your yield, your principal token approaches the underlying price over time, just like how a zero coupon bond approaches par value at maturity. So we needed to create an AMM that dictates this price movement even without any swaps happening. So on Uniswap, for example, the only way a price of a token can change is that if swap happens. The thing on Pendle is that we need to dictate the price of the asset to move upwards, even if there's no swap happening, because that's a natural behavior of the asset. Because if you don't do that, that causes a degree of IL for users. Why? Because if they don't approach maturity and your price doesn't go up, someone else has to arbitrage the price up. Now, who do you arbitrage it from? The LPs. That is what causes impermanent loss, which means we need to design the AMM from the ground up in the sense that, we need to move the AMM curve as time passes. So that's the first challenge. So we created that AMM based on some mathematical models derived from traditional finance. You can look at it in a white paper on how we derive the AMM price movement. So that's the first part. And the second part is, we realized that yield is less volatile than spot price. Well, ETH can go to $100 or can go to 10,000 next year. But you and I both know that STETH yield cannot go to like 100%. Right. It will sustain around 3 to 6% probably. Knowing that yield percentage, we can then concentrate our liquidity to just be able to trade the percentage of that yield percentage. Now, so that's basically what we're doing. We're concentrating liquidity into that yield range. That's where the curve-esque model comes in, because what curve does is basically, stablecoin trades, let's say USDC to USDT, won't go beyond 1.05. And if it does happen, it's DPEG and LPs to get wrecked. So the whole idea is that they can concentrate liquidity to 1.01 to 0.999. For example, that's the yield range. Pendle's the same thing. We concentrate liquidity into a yield range because we are a yield trading protocol. So that's kind of, roughly speaking, how that works.
Got it. So basically, because there's less volatility in the yield percentage as compared to just a normal spot asset, you're able to customize the curve to be much more concentrated.
Yes.
Okay, understood. All right, let's go. We can go to Pendle Trade now.
Let's go to Pendle Trade.
Okay, so Pendle Trade is similar to Pendle V1. For those guys who don't know, we launched Pendle V2 in December of 2022, but Pendle V1 launched in like May or June of 2021. So we've been around for quite a while. So Pendle Trade is where the full Pendle suite is offered, where you can trade yields of any yield-bearing asset. Now, going back to the first question, what can users do on Pendle? Anything you can think of with yield, I think will be likely possible on Pendle. First of all, you want to get fixed yield. You can get fixed yield by buying the principal token. If you think the yield of a particular yield-bearing asset is going to go up, you buy the yield position of that yield-bearing asset. Now, that's the basic gist of things, right? But then you can go even deeper into it. So for example, you want to get a delta neutral fixed yield. How do you want to do that? Okay, so for content delta neutrals, basically you're not exposed to price risk. So you're gonna do that is you buy the principal token on Pendle of sTETH. That means you're getting fixed yield on sTETH, but you're still exposed to the price volatility of sTETH. Now, what you can do is you can short the equivalent amount somewhere else for to hedge your price risk from sTETH, and now you're getting fixed yield from your PT sTETH. You can also do the same thing for YT position, which is levering up your yield position. But if you don't want to be exposed to the price risk, you can short it somewhere else as well. Now, the thing is, we are trying to grow our PT ecosystem as well, meaning we're trying to get it accepted as collateral in more money markets, getting in more ecosystem. So what you can do right now is you can get your PT and put it as collateral to borrow some other assets. Basically, while you're holding that zero coupon bond of a Pendle asset, you can take that, free up that fund away and borrow something else and to do other things, which is what most people in traditional finance do. I mean, the whole entire collapse of SVB is because they hold so much of the treasury bonds and over leverage it. And when the treasury bond price went down because yield rates went up, they couldn't repay it. I mean, that's an unfortunate situation, of course, because they got liquidated. But the whole idea is there, where you can free up your principal position of any yield-bearing asset. And there's obviously more that I can talk about, but I think it'll be
liquidated by Uncle Sam.
Liquidated by Uncle Sam.
And pull the rug.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier about V1 and V2. I've been obviously following you guys from the very, very early days, and I was actually looking at Element Fi and Wine AP Wine at the same time.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while, right? These are OG names, and I noticed that in V1 there wasn't much traction coming from the Pendle side of things, right? And then out of nowhere, V2 enters, and then I felt like at that inflection moment, everything changed for you guys. Could you take us back in time and talk about what happened then?
It was been a while ago since I'd covered this, because this was usually the topic that we talk about when we launched V2.
When V2?
That was, okay, so again, we launched V1 in May, and then it was pretty decent traction until we launched on Avalanche in November, December of 2021. That was when the Snow Coin era was really booming, all the Snow protocols. It's been a while. We supported Wonderland. And then that was the first time we saw really strong traction on Pendle, because imagine Wonderland gives like 4 or 5 digit APY, and you can lock in that rate, or you can leverage up on that rate if you think the rate's gonna go up. So again, people start coming in, it's like, oh my God, someone got 1 million percentage APY on Pendle. Like, how do they do that? And then, okay, so people start learning about Pendle, and this one we started to see, okay, this is a strong use case for us. Then we went back to the drawing board, figured the product, what's wrong with the product, and okay, we started tweaking a little bit. But I think it can come down to a few things. First one, our tokenomics was upgraded into VE Pendle. That's when other protocols are coming in. Hey, we want our assets to have more utility. Let's support Pendle on. Let's support our assets on Pendle so we can get our assets to have more utility. And they started getting VE Pendle and then to vote for themselves and yada yada. It's basically the VE curve style ecosystem that we're trying to build. So that's one thing that we changed. The other thing is the product wise. It's a big change in the product. We used to have YT, PT tokens traded separately on 2 different AMMs because they're 2 different assets. Then we figured that, well, PT and YT are both sides of the same coin, so there should be a way for us to use one liquidity to trade these 2 assets. So that's what we did. PT and YT now trade on the same pool, so that's even more concentrated. They realized that yield range is concentrated. Why do we concentrate liquidity there? Also, thanks to UniV3 back then who pioneered, I wouldn't say pioneer, but like popularized the idea of concentrated liquidity. Then we realized that, okay, we can concentrate liquidity into a certain yield range. Why don't we do that? And that's what we did. And then, we also ramped up our marketing efforts after we launched V2. It was a very painful 2022 when we were building. You started to see loyal community members start leaving as you don't say things. But then, fast forward to 2022, that's pretty much here we are, trying to grow the different verticals that we have.
Did you say there was 1 million percentage APY on Wonderland back in the day at that peak?
Yeah, I mean, you can do that on Pendle.
Easy to do,
It's pretty easy to do. I mean, even right now, if you go on SDI, you can get like, 40 something, 50% APY, assuming they don't drop the yield from SDI.
Yeah.
So it is possible.
Basically, yeah.
So you're telling me when sFrax comes out with 10% yield, you can get 100% yield on stables?
Well, assuming depending on the market, how the market behaves, and there should be an opportunity for you to get these numbers on Pendle. Back then, we tried out some pretty absurd numbers because I would say market wasn't as efficient a few months ago. Then people still they didn't have much idea what they were doing on Pendle. So you can see like, I don't know, 1,000,000% APY on GLP on Pendle. And then we were tweeting heavily about it. I was like, hi, we're doing this. And why are you not doing it? And then we actually showed the transactions of what we were doing. And then like, yeah, we're actually getting that yield. Like, why are you not doing it? And then people started coming in, people started learning about us. And then market started becoming more efficient. That opportunity is no longer there, but you can still get a pretty decent amount if you know what you're doing on Pendle.
And I mean, obviously talking about these crazy nose-bleeding APYs, I just have to be the sour puss in the room and ask you, what are some risks when you start getting into these million, thousands % APYs?
Yeah, like what you mentioned previously, if the yield that you bought actually dropped and then you can't cover the cost that you bought that yield position for, you're losing money. So in GLP's case, back then it was hovering around 20%. And then people were locking fixed rate there, which drove the yield position on Pendle up to like, I don't know, 10%. If you're buying that thing for 10%, but you're actually receiving 20%, that's actually 100% yield, just double your money.
Right.
So that was what's happening. So like, people thinking it was going to stay at 20%. So people started racking up the yield position, and GMX announced V2. And then GLP yield basically dropped because a bunch of the volume from GMX V1 went to the GM pools in GMX V2. So the yield in GLP dropped. Well, that also in turn causes, the people who bought that yield position back then, they were receiving, of course, 100% APY. But ever since they migrated, if you didn't exit that yield position in time, well, you're left holding that GLP position, which is receiving under 10% yield. Well, you're still not losing money if they're still giving out 10% right now. But then if their yield drops even further, you'll start not being able to cover your, the price that you paid for the yield position.
And I think it's important to cover this price that you paid, because I think what the biggest unlock aside from VE Pendle and all the other things that came with the V2 is Flashswapping. Combining YT and PT into one pool is a very large unlock.
Yes.
Because as I saw with all the other YT PT tokenomics, YT always, it fragments liquidity across the board for every protocol. Because YT and PT are, again, two sides of the same coin. They should have been in one pool, but yet nobody had that unlock. So please tell the listeners, what is Flashswapping and why was it such a big deal?
Okay, so the whole idea of PTYT is that, again, like back to the rental example that I mentioned previously, a house consists of two parts: the right to own the house, which is the principal of the house, and the right to receive the rent of the house. If you split the two, let's say the rental position within 2 years is about $100,000, and the principal of the house is $900,000, the price of the house is $1 million, right? You can split the two. Now, knowing that PTYT can be merged back into the underlying asset or split back again into PTYT, now we can make use of that equation. So if you are, let's say, our AMM is a PT AMM, there's no YT AMM out there. So trading YT uses flash swaps. What happens is if you're buying YT, you're basically you're holding YT. And that is also the same thing as I mint PT and YT, but I sell the PT away. You're also getting YT. Now, with that equation in mind, we realize that, okay, so then if I'm gonna buy YT, I don't have to have a YT AMM. What I can do, I can just mint PTYT for you. I can sell the PT away through our PT AMM and then give you the YT, and you end up holding YT anyway. Note that the swap only happens in PT side, but then you're still receiving YT in the end. Now on our app, it feels like as if you're interacting with the YT AMM, but what happens behind the scene is like we're solving PT for you. So that's the gist of flash swaps. Well, selling YT is just basically the reverse of buying YT. So note that if you're buying YT, it's equivalent to selling PT. Then if you're selling YT, it's equivalent to buying PT. And then again, like what I mentioned, PT and YT sums up to the underlying. if the rental position is $100,000, the principal position is $900,000, the house is $1 million. Now, if the rental goes up, which means the rental position is $200,000, for example, your principal your ownership of the house goes to $800,000. Now, again, if YT price goes up, PT price goes down. Again, they both have inverse relation in their pricing, which also means that if you buy YT, it's equivalent to selling PT. YT price goes up, PT price goes down. I mean, there's a lot of ways you can look at it and then realize that they are both sides of the same coin. So yeah, that's pretty much how we figured that, okay, let's figure out a way to concentrate liquidity into one AMM. And that's what we did for PTYT.
So Pendle, it's complicated product.
It's very complicated.
It's people that are intermediate to advanced in DeFi. And there's like this trend of complicated products coming to DeFi. It's only natural as people find more ways to find capital efficiency and maximize their yield. Do you have any advice to founders with complicated DeFi Legos on how to go to market and how to message these type of products to users?
Yeah, I would say really abstract away the complicated part into simple terms and simple UI. So again, like what we mentioned, Pendle, I would say, honestly speaking, I don't think Pendle is that complicated. I think options are more complicated. It's just that the education for options is so widespread available, but then the education for interest rate trading is not there. So we have to build the entire education stack ourselves, which comes down to what I would suggest, have a big education stack ready. We invest heavily our resources on just building our educational resource. We have a learn page in the app itself where you can just learn on how to trade yield. But I think beyond that, you're only going to attract people who are willing to learn and willing to explore your education page and basically try to make it as simple as possible. What about the people who are not willing to learn, or people who are just the average Joe come in to just get yield? I think that's where you can have a separate UI coming in. That's what we did. So we built a separate UI called Pendle Earn, where that's where we can provide just fixed yield or LP in just one simple click. And you don't even need to have the assets required to LP. We'll just route it to 1inch for you.
Right, you zap it.
Yeah, so we just route it to an aggregator for you. We zap it for you. So that's, I think, one thing that helped us out a lot. Even though the app is very complicated, you can create a very simple UI you don't have to cover all the use case of your complicated app. Like in our case, we just help users buy PT, and we don't even talk about the word PT in a simple UI. We just said it's a fixed yield fund. Whereas what you're actually doing is you're buying PT behind the scenes. Now that, I think, helped us out a lot in trying to get the retail, more normie people to get to use Pendle.
Yeah, so in short, the education stack you're saying is you got to dictate it for two types of users: ones who are eager to learn and want to learn, and you give them all the curriculum, the full walkthrough guides and the how-tos, and frankly, those users are rewarded because they get to figure out the high yield strategies and they really get paid for their education.
Exactly.
Then on the other side, you have the apes who just want to ape. And then you literally created another UI product for those guys.
Yes.
Because they will never click on that learn tab.
Exactly.
And they would just go to the earn tab and just do it there. Okay, so the advice is to build two user journeys for each of those specific user types.
Well, that's how we approach it. I'm not sure if it's that advice I would give to all protocols, but yeah, it has been a pretty interesting journey for us. But I think what's more interesting for Pendle Earn is that it serves as a proxy for us to pitch to centralized parties to provide fixed yield on their behalf. So recently we integrated with OKX Wallet actually, where OKX Wallet you can get fixed yield from OKX Wallet. What happens behind the scenes is they're actually buying Pendle PT behind the scenes. But what's interesting about Pendle Earn is that it makes things very easy to explain. It's like, we have an Earn product as well. It's on-chain. The yield comes from on-chain products like STETH. You don't have to wonder where the yield comes from, like Celsius. And then why don't you integrate our DeFi product on your platform? Because we can offer higher yields than you, because we're basically building DeFi and building STETH. Why don't you do it? And yeah, that's one thing that we're focusing as well, just growing the Pendle Earn ecosystem into other Earn products. Similar to how I would say KuCoin uses, Gemini? Gemini was using Celsius. Gemini was using Celsius back then.
It's in Genesis.
Oh, was it Genesis?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, one of the tech labs.
One of various things.
Yeah. But back then, I mean, again, for decentralized parties, you don't know where the yield comes from. But on Pendle, I mean, it just comes from STETH, but split into two parts. The fixed yield is there. So it's very transparent. And if anyone wants to integrate it, we have pretty much all the APIs ready for them to integrate. So that's another part of the second purpose of the second UI. It's very easy to explain to other parties as well.
Yeah, we were at the OKX office the other day. They've been doing a huge push towards DeFi in the world on chain with the wallet that they built.
Yeah.
Beautiful wallet.
Beautiful wallet. They were talking about, integrating account abstraction. Didn't they say like Vitalik was in their office or something?
Yeah. They totally did. They totally did. That's right. They totally did. And I think it's so bullish because OKX has such a large audience, and that if they are the first kind of gateway into, excuse my language, but the virgin experience into DeFi, it's going to be a very nice and smooth experience.
I think that's a requirement. Yeah, the wallet interface is so simple. I mean, you don't have to, just giving you the 12C passphrase and then telling you to remember that, and then the whole onboarding experience for typical wallet is extremely daunting. I think these people trying to solve this issue, I think it's a very big push for the industry, I would say. Well, also getting your project integrated with them, I think it's also a big push just to introduce DeFi to users without them actually knowing they're using DeFi. That's, I think, a big step in the industry. Also, the transparency in DeFi is so clear. You can look at everything on chain. Yeah, so whatever you do is very clear.
And speaking of the Earn product is so simple, is because the underlying works so beautifully. And it works so beautifully because you guys are able to attract a ton of liquidity. And could you quickly talk to us, how are you incentivizing people to come LP into these pools and provide the liquidity?
A big part of it, I would say, is trying to get the message across. Even until today, I don't think we still nailed it down perfectly, that LP on Pendle has no IL. Again, if you have STETH, a lot of people have STETH. Why not just park it onto Pendle? You're still earning that STETH yield. On top of that, you're using that STETH yield for swap fees on Pendle. It's just like how if you're holding stablecoins like USDC or DAI, you didn't just hold it, you put it on Curve. There's extra 3% yield for you, and you're just holding that same stablecoin. Same thing for Pendle. Any yield-bearing asset that you have, you just hold it for the sake of holding, spark on the Pendle. That message, I don't think we've really pushed it across very well yet. Maybe it's just because we haven't been around for too long. The Lindy effect is not there yet. But that's one thing that we're still trying to do. But again, to your question, I think it's something that users appreciate as well. That's why they come in and provide liquidity on the Pendle. Because if you're just holding STETH, why not just park it onto Pendle, which is why institutions and bigger monies are pretty interested in us. That's one. And I'll say just make sure get our audit reports right, and all of our education stack on LPing right is what we're trying to do.
And you guys also offer liquidity incentives, right, on top of everything else. And that was a nice tie-in to your new VE tokenomics. So could you kind of walk us through that?
So VE Pendle is inspired by VE Curve. It's I would say the tokenomic that works for protocols that can draw interest from other protocols to get their asset listed. So Balancer, I think, is one of them. Curve is another one. I think Pendle is another one, but I don't think it applies for all protocols. But the whole idea is that you lock Pendle for VE Pendle. The longer you lock, the more VE Pendle you get. What does VE Pendle give you? 3 things: the right to vote for a pool, the right to receive dividends of a protocol, and what's boosting. Yeah, sorry, boosting your rewards for LPs. Now, all these 3 verticals can, if you're familiar with Curve, you'll be familiar with all 3 of them. Boosting, you can build Convex on top of it. You can build your yield boosters and everything. Your votes, you can build like driving markets on top of it, and people start accumulating your token to vote for their own pools. That's one thing that's interesting. And then the final part is just like, just getting yield from the protocol fees. But we did tweak a little bit from the original Curve model, where if you vote for a pool, you actually receive 80% of the swap fees of the pool. That's inspired by the VE3 model. The reason being, we don't want toxic liquidity on Pendle. We want pools that have high yields, have more votes. And then this is, I think, especially useful for protocols that are not looking to vote at all. So for example, you have a DAI pool, Maker is not gonna get your token and vote for it, incentivize their own pool, because they were just so big, they wouldn't care about Pendle supporting their asset. But the thing is, because so many people trade that pool, the yield just to vote for that pool is so high that all VE Pendle voters just naturally vote to that pool, which means pools that generate fees receives more incentives, turns deeper liquidity, which handles more swaps and more fees for us again. This flywheel, I think, is something that we see works because our highest voted pools are GLP, STE, and SDI, and Swell. But Swell is voted by the Swell team. But then the other three, our three highest voted pools are, organic votes from people who just want to get swap fees from this pool. So yeah, I think we kind of see that working a little here.
Yeah, because when I first saw your docs and reading the VE, tokenomics part, I was like, wow, these guys learned from the best and they just adopted the best pieces of our product, because obviously Frax also have a VE FXS element to it.
Yeah.
But I noticed that you guys gave 80% of the LP trading fees away to VE Pendle holders, but that literally comes at the cost of all the LPs, right?
They get incentives. If you think about it, the amount of swap fees that a pool can generate is definitely less than the amount of emission emitted from votes to that pool. So in turn, they're actually getting more.
Sure. So effectively, the LP providers are actually making a trade between receiving the swap fees, which are paid in the native asset of whether it be stETH or a PT stETH, for Pendle instead.
Yes. For VE Pendle holders, I would say. So for Pendle token,
for the Pendle token. Yeah. These LPers, they effectively are making this trade. So if you're LPing these pools, you need to understand what you are LPing into and the kind of assets that you are receiving thereof. So they're definitely giving up the delta there. And now I wanted to ask a bit deeper about the VE tokenomics regarding how the token supply. So I wanted to double click into this flywheel effect here. I have a concern that it may make it really difficult for new pools to get kickstarted, and they would have to pay a lot more in terms of VE Pendle bribes because, well, they won't have a lot of volume day one, right? And everybody would want to vote for the pools that they do. So are you guys doing any like special bootstrapping and kickstarting for new pools coming in?
Okay, so I think to your point, what the VE33, I wouldn't call it a VE33 model, just partly inspired by the VE33 model, that actually solves your problem. Where traditionally in Curve, the problem is that the big voters have already voted for their own pools. And if you're a small player, you have no chance of competing because you're trying to buy against this big money. On Pendle, there might be the same situation, but there's a different caveat to it. Instead of just purely getting your votes on, you can incentivize people to trade on Pendle to get the swap fees out and incentivize people to come and vote. So there's another route instead of fully just bribing your way into the ecosystem. But I think I use VE33 model as an umbrella term here, but again, we're not. But I think this VE33 models, what do they solve is that you get to incentivize pools that otherwise would not be incentivized, such as pools that are high volume. As you can clearly see that, in the very big curve pools that are not incentivized by any protocols, the yield is practically zero. Mm-hmm. And feel like that's something that we can solve by attracting more liquidity there, just by nature having swap fees given to VE Pendle holders and VE Pendle voters for this pool to increase the incentive there.
So effectively, you're saying the difference is that in VECRV, the only way for you to actually receive CRV emissions is through bribing, versus in Pendle, you actually have an opportunity to earn your way there by having people, incentivizing them to trade in whichever way you could.
Yes.
Okay, that's a fair take. That's a fair take.
Is there Convex for Pendle?
Yes, we have 2/3. There's PenPy. Built by the Magpie team.
Okay.
They're doing RedPi as well for Radiant. It's PenPy, and then there's Equilibria. They're both pretty much a Convex on top of Pendle. They have their bribing market as well. StakeDAO also integrated Pendle, but I don't think they have our assets on StakeDAO at the moment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they just a liquid locker.
And what activity have you seen in the bribes market?
I'm not sure I'm allowed to disclose this, but if you look on chain, there are quite a few people bribing for their own pool. Okay, I can share the reason why people want to bribe, and then I guess that kind of like answers my question indirectly that people are actually doing it. So if you have an LP token, right? You can park it on. You can have Pendle support it, and that will deepen your own LP token liquidity. How? So Pendle takes in yield-bearing asset. All assets that are on Pendle are yield-bearing assets. STE, LP tokens, Uniswap LP tokens, Uni3 LP tokens, anything that generates yield can put onto Pendle. Even if you don't have a token, we can stake it for you, and that, hypothetical token is like an LP token. Like, for example, you deposit it to a farm in Yearn, for example. Now, these LP tokens are supported on Pendle. The deeper your liquidity on Pendle is, means there are more of your LP tokens in existence. Which means if you incentivize your pool on Pendle, people come farming in from external assets like USDC, ETH into your asset, which is an LP token. It increases the supply of your LP tokens, which in turn deepen the liquidity of your, whatever asset that you have. That extends to your yield-bearing asset if you are an LSD protocol. If you hold, Swell ETH, ST ETH, any kinds of ETH. If you vote if you have incentives there, people start coming in. The supply of your LSDs increase. If you have an LP pool, like for example, the Pendle ETH pool itself, we want to deepen our liquidity. Instead of incentivizing pool 2 on Pendle ETH, we just take the Pendle ETH on Pendle. We support that LP token, which means if people are looking to speculate on Pendle ETH swaps, they can come here and trade it, which in turn means we have liquidity on Pendle ETH token on Pendle, which also flows back down to the Pendle ETH pool on Camelot. I know it's a long say, but it's pretty much any liquidity that flows to Pendle flows back down.
Trickle down economics.
Yeah.
No, it really does, because like, as you know, for a PT token / vanilla token pair to increase, you need more LP tokens to come in just naturally to do so.
Yeah.
So yeah, I get that.
So in the history of Pendle, what do you think are some of the most notable moments, the breakout moments for you guys?
For us, or like using it for people, from what we see people using the protocol?
I was thinking both.
For us, I think, this is very abstract, but I mean, the context of token 2049, last year, I was wearing a Pendle t-shirt. No one knew who we were. Just walking around, hey, we're a Pendle, we're launching V2 soon, blah, yada, yada, and we go to South to you and shake hands and walk away.
Yeah.
Nowadays, I think people start saying hi, which I think is a pretty humbling experience for us. And that I think is, I would say, something that's pretty, exhilarating for us. It's been pretty good. I think that comes with like the protocol, building the protocol and just trying to build things right, and then start to see things coming alive, and then you feel rewarded just seeing what you're building come to life and people start appreciating it. So that's one. The second part, like people using the protocol. We're actually surprised. A lot of, I would say, crypto add-ons are big users of Pendle. I would say big users. They understand a lot about Pendle. In Leviathan Newsroom, when I chatted with Wenmoon, he knew a lot about Pendle. And I was pretty impressed with him knowing a lot about Pendle. We started looking for more of these people, and then, oh my god, they're everywhere.
They're everywhere.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, but I mean, I would say Wenmoon is a unique character. I wouldn't say there's a lot of Wenmoons out there.
I would think so, yeah.
I also got a chance to meet them, and they're quite awesome. So for folks out there listening, if you see Dan from Pendle at a conference, come up and say hi. It makes him feel
it makes him feel good.
Okay, it makes him feel good. But how about your personal journey with Pendle? What were some of your proudest accomplishments to date?
It's just proudest accomplishments. Okay, there's one thing that I would say proud, but I think it's hard for me. Like, it's very nice for me to think that I wouldn't say done it right, but I think the team kind of figured that this is a priority, and we think that, okay, that we are right about this being a priority. Is when we're building in a bear in the whole of 2022, your socials doesn't have to make a lot of noise. Ignore the noise, including the price. And that's one thing that we think we did right. But I think one thing that we are kind of proud of is treasuring that few community members that were still there in Pendle. So we're constantly updating them, constantly, making sure that they're around, constantly making sure that they're not shunned away by the lack of development. Like, we are still building, but this is what's going on. These few community members, like, I don't know, less than 10 people that we just keep in touch with, just make sure they don't leave the community. And now that we are here, they are our biggest supporters in the community everywhere. And I think treasuring these people is something that I've been very
Biggest fans.
very, very proud of. Yeah, biggest fans are also just supporting us, and I think we should give something back in return for them by just making sure the product is right. And yeah, that's something that I think has been pretty good for me looking back.
Speaking of the future of the protocol, what does the roadmap look like for the next 12 months? Any big surprises? Maybe a V3?
There's nothing concrete that I can share, but I can share a roadmap. I will say our key focus. On the product side, there's actually something I can share. On the product side, just constantly improving the product. But I think one thing that have been very heavily requested by bigger players is that, hey, I can't trade in big sizes because slippage is high. Because that's the nature of YT, because such a small portion of such a big asset, right, like your rental position, 100,000 rental for your property is $1 million. So it's a big notional value that you're trading there. So people have been saying that, they can trade big amount because funds, they have minimum ticket size. So I figured that, okay, why don't we create a limit order that can settle the transactions off chain and also on chain,
like an RFQ,
system. Yeah. So that's what we're doing. That we're launching probably sometime in Q4, and something that me personally I will use a lot of Pendle as well. So yeah, that's something that we are building on the product side. On the growth side, just marketing beyond Twitter, we are focusing a lot on regional marketing as well. I think pretty much almost the entire crypto Twitter knows about Pendle at this point, and there's no point for us to invest more marketing resources here. We can slow it down and put it somewhere to people that have never heard about us. So there's more the regional side and more the retail side, I would say. And the final part is the BD part. I think here is what we are focusing a lot on. So there are a few things that we are looking to grow. First one is looking to grow the PT ecosystem, just getting more PT integrated elsewhere for just increasing the utility of the token. And second, institutions, getting more institutions on board. We recently got a ISD guy to just help us lead our institutional efforts. That's been pretty good. Just growing more, talking to more institutions, getting to know what they want, and just getting them to be onboarded to Pendle. And then finally growing the Pendle Earn ecosystem. This is where we're trying to get Pendle Earn on board in centralized parties, or like OKX wallet, like other Earn products to provide fixed yield for their users. I think there should be a lot of things to play around over there. It's still at a very early phase, I would say. A lot of them are still in the conversational stage. So yeah, but I think there's definitely something we can work on just because of the nature of it being on chain and just higher yields in general.
Yeah, and speaking of partnerships, earlier you mentioned, are there any interest in integrating deeper with Frax itself? Because Frax obviously has a ton of products.
For sure. Here's that we have sFraxETH on Pendle,
right? Sure.
Which is one of the most popular traded pools on Pendle, just because sFraxETH itself has higher yield because how you guys split the
even higher.
Yeah, the ETH staking rewards.
Yeah, but that's just like a first date,
this is the first date. The second date can be anything actually. So we're connected with Sam and the Frax team. So here's the thing. Any yield-bearing asset that Frax has can be plugged into Pendle. As long as your assets generate yield, or you have a vault, or anything that generates yield can be plugged into Pendle. Now it comes how do you maximize the impact for our users? Yeah, so there's anything that you guys think will be good to be added into Pendle, just let us know. We can have a look into it. And yeah, any marketing support we should be able to provide. Of course, have this asset listed and get co-market for both each other.
sFrax,
right?
It's an audit.
Yeah, we're aware, and then it's something that we're very interested in. sFrax, I think it was projected as 6 to 10%. Yeah. So
6.4, 10 high.
Yeah, so SDAI is one of our most popular assets, and even that the yield doesn't even fluctuate. There's nothing much for you to yield trade on, but sFrax being volatile assets, people are starting to speculate on where the yield's gonna go, and I think there's something gonna be interesting. But please let us know. Please give us a red carpet for sFrax launch, and we'll roll it out for you, Dan. And we'll launch it.
This is my favorite question of always the interview is what does success look like for Pendle in the next 12 months?
Can I just say an end goal instead of 12 months?
Sure.
Yeah.
If we can tokenize, if JP Morgan provides our asset, as if JP Morgan uses us for their interest rate swap products, I would say that's the end goal.
All right, Jamie Dimon, you heard it here first. You heard it here first.
I know
Reach out
you're a
to my
loyal
boy
listener,
Dan.
Jamie.
Yes. Reach out to the boy Dan over here.
So now it's time for the lightning round?
I think so. So at the end of these pods, we like to, always ask a couple questions just to get to know the person behind the profile picture. And, the first question I always want to start with is, what was your virgin crypto experience? And sex doesn't count.
Pendle. Yes, I was in traditional finance before. Pendle was my first. What I did was Uniswap.
Wow, that was the first thing you did.
That was when Pendle,
Right.
way before Pendle launched.
Right, we touched about
this is crypto. And what I did was, okay, I didn't know what day one. I was like, okay, Uniswap LP. That's what I did. Open a sex account, Uniswap. Same.
Wow. Okay, wow, you went straight to the chain.
Yeah.
All right. Second question. What is your favorite off-chain touch grass activities and hobbies?
Photography and videography.
Okay. Yeah, now
Man of the arts.
Yeah, now we know why the educational content for Pendle is so good.
Yeah. Would be some advice to your younger self?
My advice to my younger self: don't be skeptical about what's trending. I didn't touch crypto at all because I just didn't like the idea. Because I didn't like the idea of digital money, and I never bothered looking into it until I stumbled upon Pendle. Okay, fine, let's look into it, and then I realized, okay, crypto is way bigger than I thought. So I think a lot of skeptics just have never tried it. Mm-hmm. That also applies to myself in AI and like any other trending industry. Just don't shun it. Just look at it first with an open mind, and then when I can actually form an opinion because I know it, then I think I get to form an opinion.
Yes, doubters always become the biggest believers.
The converse, right? The hardest to convert becomes the strongest converted.
That's my goal.
Yeah. And then final question from me, and then Dave has a closing one. But if you weren't in TradFi, weren't in crypto, what would your professional career path be?
If you work in TradFi and
if you were not working in TradFi, were not working in crypto or tech, what would your career path be?
Damn, those are the three hills I would die in. But it might be ironic that I'm in Flywheel, but I'm very interested in the creator economy. The creator economy is something that it ties well into my photography and videography hobby, but the creator economy is something that I'm very, very passionate in. But I'm just a casual observer. But it's definitely something I can do. I don't know, managing creators or being a creator myself. Yeah, it's a lot for me to do there. But there's something that
Quick question. So what kind of photography and videography? What are you shooting?
I do landscape videography. I'm pretty new to videography, but I do landscape photography mostly. But I've been shooting a lot of different things since COVID because I can't go out and shoot landscapes.
Right. Cool.
Who do you think should be the next guest on Flywheel? Who would you recommend to come on?
Oh, let me think about it. Maybe I can offer some curveballs.
Yes, think about it.
What you say?
Yeah. There's a big responsibility because it usually happens.
I would really be interested if you can get one of the old big faces in crypto. Your Suzu, your Kyle, your Dongwons.
Maybe Crypto Dog?
Ooh,
sure. Just one of them be on board the podcast and let them share their thoughts from their perspective. I think it's something I would really be interested in.
Forget Kyle Davies on.
Okay. All right. Guess that's a good one. And Dave, I think we should definitely cut it off right there. But would you mind signing us out?
Sure thing. But before we go, where can people find you and Pendle on socials?
You can get me on Twitter on ddangledan, funny name, or our Discord. I'm most active in our Discord.
Yeah, and we're most active on Telegram, so make sure you join Flywheel DeFi on Telegram. Join us on Twitter too, at Flywheel DeFi. We have a TikTok. We're with the Zoomers. At Flywheel DeFi. Make sure you go to that bell button, hit it, and subscribe to us on YouTube. Give us a comment. Let us know what you think. Give us a like. You can follow me on Twitter at DeFiDave22.
You can follow me at 0xcapital_K and make sure you buy our FriendTech shares. Plug that there too.
Yes, buy our friend. Yeah, you want to hear creator economy? We have our FriendTech where we have exclusive show notes in detail. So if you want all the alpha and then some, make sure you unlock a key on FriendTech. Subscribe to us on our website, flywheeldefi.com. And that's it. This is Flywheel. We'll see you next week. Everything said on this episode is not financial or tax advice. This channel is strictly for educational purposes and is not investment advice or solicitation to buy or sell any assets or to make any financial decisions. This video is not tax advice whatsoever. Please talk to your accountant and do your own research.